More than 200 people kidnapped by Hamas on the 7th of October are still being held hostage. Yarden Roman is one of them. She was visiting family in Kibbutz Be'er with her husband Alon and 3-year-old daughter Geffen when the militants attacked. Her brother Gili Roman has been in Washington seeking support from senators and representatives. DW's Washington bureau chief Ines Pohl reports.
Gili Roman has been at the Holocaust Memorial Museum before. This time, the German-Israeli didn't come to Washington to learn about the past, but to fight for the future of his sister, Yarden Roman.
On Saturday morning, we all got into the shelters. I got to the shelter in Tel Aviv. She got to the shelter in Be'eri next to Gaza. So I asked which teddy bear got into the shelter, which teddy bear was left out, and she was kind of frustrated that the favorite teddy bears were kind of neglected outside, and Geffen, my niece, might be upset with her, and I said, leave it, she will meet the teddy bears, she will be okay.
Yarden hid with her husband Alon and Geffen, but it wasn't going to be okay. The shelter wasn't a safe place.
They were taken, the 3 of them, inside a vehicle with 4 armed terrorists towards Gaza, and at a certain point next to the border they decided to escape. They ran outside, jumped out of the moving car. Yarden was holding Geffen in her hands, and they were starting running towards the forest, like a small forest, trying to find shelter. The tourists noticed them, started to run after them, shooting at them, trying to either kill them or capture them again. Then Yarden understood that she cannot run fast enough, so she just gave the most precious thing in her life to the hands of her husband Alon, and he managed to run away really fast and find a hiding spot where he was hiding with Geffen until dark time, more than 12 hours with no food, no water, nothing. Then they started to slowly get into the kibbutz.
Jewish groups here in the US are financing Gili Roman's trip to Washington so he can meet with lawmakers on Capitol Hill.
It's crucial for us to convey the message that time is running out, and we have to be vocal and we have to act, and we need them to stand with us to express this message on the Senate floor, to ensure that people do not forget that there are still over 200 people alive that can still be saved today, tomorrow. If I could speak with Yarden right now and to deliver a message to her, it's clear that the first thing that I would tell her is that Geffen, her daughter, is alive. And the brave act that she has done to run away and to give Geffen to her husband Alon was worthwhile, and Geffen is safe and happy and secure with us.
Back at the Holocaust Memorial Museum, Gili Roman lays out the connections between then and now.
Our family story comes from what we are seeing here, from the Holocaust, that my grandmother, my German grandmother, managed to run away just the day after Kristallnacht. All of her family, except from her brother, has died there. And she taught us how important it is to have a state and to have a secure homeland for ourselves. Unfortunately, it's not completely secure. If my sister had to run away also from people trying to kill her just because she's Jewish and trying to shoot at her and her innocent child. But it's crucial for us to keep this security and to have also Germany by our side and with us. So we have to have a safe space in this world.
Well, Gershon, Baskin is an Israeli peace activist who helped negotiate the release of Israeli soldier Gilad Shalit, who was held hostage by Hamas for more than 5 years. Welcome back to DW. You've been in direct contact with Hamas at quite a senior level for some time now. But now, when perhaps such communication channels might be particularly valuable, you've broken off contact. Tell us why.
No, I haven't broken off contact. I'm still in contact with some Hamas members. They have gone silent over the last days, which is usually an indication that something serious is going on. At least that's what I hope. I broke contact with the main interlocutor who I've been in contact with for 17 years, the person who was on the other side of the negotiations for the release of Gilad Shalit and 1,027 prisoners, Dr. Razi Hamad, who until recently was the Minister of Social Affairs in Gaza and a member of the Politburo making decisions in Gaza. He actually left Gaza about 2 months ago, and he's been in Beirut, and he has acted as the primary spokesperson defending Hamas and legitimizing the terrorism that they did in Israel on October 7th. In a recent interview that he gave in Beirut in Arabic, he declared that Hamas was justifying in what it did and will continue to do it, and wished that there will be many October 7ths, and said that Israel, the state of Israel, needed to be annihilated. It was an unjust and illogical state. And he crossed the line when he denied that they did what they did and said that they would redo it again and again. This is no longer someone who I can have any respect for and see as a potential interlocutor in a very difficult negotiation to save human lives.
And you wrote an open letter in which you said, I think you have lost your mind and you have lost your moral code. I never want to speak to you again. Very personal words.
Yeah, I went deeper and I explained what I was talking about, and also the context of having a relationship with this man for 17 years and having succeeded in negotiating several ceasefires. And even on the day that Gilad Shalit was released together with the Palestinian prisoners at 7 o'clock in the morning, he called me and said to me, next time we'll negotiate peace. For the last years, we've been talking about the release of the bodies of 2 Israeli soldiers in Gaza and 2 civilians who are alive in Gaza. And we've talked about the possibilities of long-term understandings and ceasefires. But something happened to this man, and he is not the same person that I've known. We've met 4 times face to face. We've talked about life. We've talked about our families. We've talked about religion, everything that normal people talk about. But he has become a monster and defending the acts of monsters.
And on the hostages who are still being held, should we believe Hamas when they claim that Israeli hostages were killed in Israeli airstrikes?
We don't know. I wouldn't believe a word that they say. As I caution everyone, everything that's said around the issue of the hostages by Israel, by Hamas, by Qatar, by Egypt, by anyone, is all part of the negotiations. The release of the videotape of the 3 women, the release of 2 women and then another 2 women. This is all part of a framework of negotiation, of creating an environment of pressure on the government of Israel on one side, on Hamas on the other side. The Israeli incursion into Gaza, not going all the way and not yet going into the tunnels, is aimed at putting pressure on Hamas with regard to the hostages. I think that we have to be categorical here, and we have to say that the hostages must be freed. The women, the children, the infants, the elderly, the sick, and the women have to be released, and released without a payment, because it's not only against international law to do this, to hold them as captives, they're innocent, non-combatants. It's against Islam. It's against the Quran. It says specifically that you don't attack women and children and elderly, and you certainly don't hold them as hostage.
And it's interesting that you talk about all of this as part of the negotiation, as part of the game, if I can put it that way. When Hamas released 4 hostages on what they said were humanitarian grounds last week in 2 sets, what was that about then? What pressure was releasing part of your leverage, putting on, presumably, on the Israeli government?
It wasn't a Hamas strategic decision to release them. We need to see the wider context. The first 2 hostages who were released are American citizens. They were specifically named by President Biden and Secretary Blinken to the Qataris, and the Americans put a lot of pressure on the Qataris to pressure Hamas, and they delivered. This was a sign of Qatar being a serious partner in these negotiations, despite the problematics of Qatar involved in these negotiations. Several days later, the Egyptians managed to release 2 other hostages who were not American citizens, in fact, only had Israeli citizenship, and they were released directly by the Qassam forces, the military wing of Hamas. And this was essentially the competition between Qatar and Egypt, showing who's a better negotiator, who's more important here, where should the emphasis be placed, who should the Americans support?
As a peace activist, you have said in the past, and I'm quoting you now, I have called Israel's bombing of innocent civilians in Gaza a war crime. Do you stand by that?
I do. I do stand by that. I think that There's a human catastrophe taking place in Gaza. The numbers of innocent non-combatants being killed is intolerable. And Israel should be fighting its battles without endangering so many civilians, so many citizens in Gaza. I want to say, though, that I think it's completely justified for Israel to say no ceasefire without hostages being released. In fact, even humanitarian aid going into Gaza should be linked to hostages being released. The pressure should be applied on Hamas and not on Israel with regard to humanitarian aid. In fact, I have said that Israel should announce that Israel is willing to bring humanitarian aid of its own, water and food and medical supplies to the innocents of Gaza. But Hamas must be pressured to release hostages immediately. Time is running out.
That's very clear. Thank you so much for joining us. Former Israeli hostage negotiator Gershon Baskin.
Thank you.
Let's hear from Galia Golomb Mizrahi now. She was born and raised in Israel, now lives in Los Angeles in the United States. She sadly lost 2 family members in the Hamas terrorist attack, and 4 of her relatives are still missing. Her cousin Nadav and his 20-year-old daughter were murdered in the Hamas attack on their kibbutz on October the 7th. Nadav's wife, Chen, their teenage daughter, Agam, and their small sons, Gal and Tal, are believed to have been kidnapped by Hamas. Galia, welcome to DW. How did you find out your family was among the victims?
On the day the attack happened, I was here in the U.S. Preparing for my flight back home. And we have a WhatsApp group where we're all connected, and it was a Jewish holiday. And very early in the morning, Israel time, we started getting the messages that the kibbutz is being attacked. And my cousin and his family took refuge in their safe room in the house. After about 20 hours or so, we lost contact with them, and we started fearing for the worst. Fast forward into Sunday and Monday, we learned that from the IDF that were able to go into the house, that they suspected that there were 4 bodies in the room where they were hiding, and that 2 are missing. And in those first few hours, we had hoped that maybe the little boys, Tal and Gal, managed to escape. There was a lot of confusion. There was a lot of fighting. It was an active fighting area, and we were getting conflicting information. Into the second week of the war, we were able to get concrete information that there were only 2 bodies in the room that were my family members. It took many days to identify them because they were dismembered and burned. And we were able to confirm that it was my cousin Nadav and his 20-year-old daughter, because she had a butterfly tattoo, and he recently had surgery, and he had stitches, and he had a metal plate. He had a bicycling accident, and he was recovering. So we were able to figure out that it's him. And then the 4, the wife and the other children, were missing. For a long period of time, missing meant 2 things. They were either in a pile somewhere, I hate to say it, unrecognizable, or kidnapped. There wasn't any evidence as to where they were. And last week, we got concrete evidence from the IDF intelligence community that they have confirmation that they were indeed kidnapped that day. And that's really all we know at this point.
So you know nothing about where or how they are?
No. So that is the agony and the anguish that we're facing right now, is that we don't know where they are. We don't know what condition or if they were injured in the process of being kidnapped. We don't know if the mom and the kids are together. We don't know if they're held in the tunnels below ground in the dark, as some witnesses have told us from the recently liberated kidnappees, or they're in a home somewhere. We haven't slept. All we can think about is, are they hurt? How are the little boys? Are they with their mom or not? Did the boys witness their father being killed? What did they see on the way? How was their journey? There have been to any of the hostages, not just my family, there's been no proof of life. There's been no videos, no Red Cross delegation that was able to go into Gaza to see, what's happened to all of these people. We're in the complete darkness.
Yeah.
And it has been terrible, terrible, terrible to just speculate and not know what's happened to our family.
It sounds like an absolute nightmare. You say you went back to Israel shortly after the attacks. How did that feel?
Yes.
How was that for you?
I just didn't think about it. I booked a flight. I also heard that there was a lot of distress, and there was, because of the attack was so sudden and the army was calling a lot of reservists to come and help in the fight. They were short on a lot of supplies. So my husband and I took 3 extra suitcases. We had a friend who was in the army, and we brought with us cell phone batteries and little LED lights for helmets and any supplies that we could to help people. And then I just got on an L flight, the only airline who was flying, 14 hours in fear and in sorrow. And from the minute I got there, it was like nonstop action, a lot of sorrow, attending funerals, talking to family members, and just really being immersed in like what's happening in Israel at the moment.
Part of why this was so shocking to people in Israel is that the country was built on a promise of safety and security for the Jewish people. Will your home country ever be the same to you after this?
So thank you for asking that. I think we're currently in national trauma, and I think really world trauma, right? I mean, the things that we've witnessed, the eyewitness testimony that we've heard, the video we've seen, I don't think our brains or human beings were created to even process these kinds of thoughts or these kinds of images. I think that we will overcome this, but we're never going to be the same.
Yeah. Galia, I don't know if you're even in a place to think about politics right now, but do you think Israel is doing everything it can to get the hostages released?
So, it's a complex question. I would tell you that I have confidence in the conversations and the back channeling that has happened. My family stance is, when they're asked, do you know more? Are you not sharing what the army told you or what the intelligence have told you? Our stance is, even if we knew, we're not going to say, because we don't want to sabotage the chance of getting them back. I would say that I think there's the American intelligence community and other nations are helping. And I would like to have faith and trust in the system that everything is being done to get innocent civilians back.
Yeah.
There is a political divide. I will not deny that the attack caught us by surprise, that there was a delay in response, right? Our internal forces took a long time to get there and to protect us. And these are things that will be addressed and will be looked at when this is done.
Yeah.
But right now, everybody is very united in the national focus to get peace and to get everyone back, no matter if they're Israeli or not. All nationalities, all human beings who are held in captivity need to come back home to their loved ones.
Thank you so much for speaking to us today, Galia, for sharing your story and that of your family, and we're really hoping for some good news soon.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the time and the opportunity. Thank you so much.